Hello, my name is Dennis French. I'm playing two characters in this show. So I'm playing Popescu, who is one of the brides. She's the French courtesan from Versailles, just before the French Revolutionary period. And yeah, she's really kind of over the top, camp, dramatic. We're going to be styling her kind of in like drag. So very heavy on the makeup, very big on like a breastplate, very, very big like hair, and she's an absolute tart. She's really, really tarty. She's she brings a lot to kind of like the contrast of the characters that the brides are, because you've got kind of like a very maternal figure, you've got a brand new bride, you've got a very young bride, and you've got me, who's kind of like the doesn't really care. She's very kind of like, I'm the best, and I am the like superior bride, and I think in a way she's probably Dracula's favourite, because she is so kind of like confident in herself, and she exudes so much kind of sexuality, and she's so brazen that she's just very, very kind of like chaotic, but in a good way. And then my second character, my main character, is Lord Arthur Godalming, who is very, very, very aristocratic, very old money, very kind of stiff upper lip plummet, yes. And yeah, he's very full of life. For someone who is of that kind of generation, of that kind of wealth, he's very youthful. He's got quite a bit of innocence, but it's like cheeky innocence, flirty. He's definitely like one of the lads, and he's got this absolute undying love for Lucy, who he does kind of, you know, become engaged to, and they've got like this really rich kind of history together of growing up in that kind of like world of old money and wealth. But yeah, he's absolutely like infatuated with her, but it's not in the sense of like, oh my god, I love you, in the contrast of like Suet or like Quincy, and like has like an itch to scratch. It's very much a case of he knows that he's got her, he's got that confidence, he's like my other character, he's got that confidence that he's very secure in himself, but he's also very dramatic. He's very, very, very dramatic. Yeah, which I guess we'll see when we do the show.
Yeah, it'll be brilliant when it all comes together.
Yeah, it's going to be so good, and the accents, because I've got to switch between two, like a French accent and then a very aristocratic.
And the costumes are very different too.
Yeah, oh my god, thank god there's a massive gap between the scenes, because de-dragging, taking myself out of complete full makeup to then have a complete new set of hair and makeup, that's going to be a challenge.
You might need a team for
Yeah,
that.
I probably will. I probably will have a team of like makeup artists and like hairstylists and stuff, and if I'm a complete diva backstage, I apologise. Like now.
That was brilliant.
That I'm really excited for, because you kind of get to see Arthur in the complete opposite way as this like cool, sophisticated aristocrat. He's very dramatic, and he's very like and he goes into this real panic, and it's a transfusion scene where he has to give Lucy a blood transfusion, and he what you discover about Arthur is that behind this shell of sophistication is this really wimpy, cowardly, comical character, and it's a real contrast, because a lot of people of that generation, they weren't over the top dramatic, they weren't like out of place in any way, and it really shows Arthur in a really kind of vulnerable setting. You kind of see where his vulnerabilities and his fears really lie, which is, you know, he absolutely hates needles, and he'll do anything to save Lucy. So you've got that real kind of plethora of emotion, and it's a really kind of heavy scene for me when I'm in character, because you've really kind of got to put yourself in that space of vulnerability, that space of being scared, which as an actor you just kind of have to imagine yourself in a situation that would put you in that mindset, and yeah, you kind of you feel for Arthur, because you can really see his pain. I would say with the bride, there's not so much a journey that she's going on as such. She's just hungry. She's just starving, hungry for blood, but she's also, you know, she's very secure in her sexuality and she owns it. So she just wants to kind of get wet and wild, really, which is a lot. It's a lot of fun to play. And then with Arthur, as you transition through the play, you really kind of see this, almost this fall from innocence, really, of kind of having this really privileged life and upbringing, and everyone kind of being obsessed with him, and him kind of having that energy of being important to then all of a sudden becoming what I would say maybe an accessory to a roster of people, as in like the heroes, with like Quincy and with Harker and Van Helsing. And Seward as well. You know, you really see him as just kind of one of the guys, but also you kind of foreshadow that fall from innocence because his father's been taken ill, and everything's kind of bittersweet in the end for him, because not only does he lose his father, he loses Lucy, and in the end he loses his best friend, which is Quincy. So there's that kind of bittersweet thing of, yes, he's very wealthy and he's very privileged, but he has to go through that hardships. And for example, with his father, he inherits all that wealth and all that kind of like magistry, but he's still at a loss because he's still grieving. And you kind of, the whole performance for him really is just a kind of process of elongated grief. And it makes him tougher. It really kind of sees him lose that naivety. It really kind of sees that like loss of innocence and, oh, this is the real world. Because he's also been very sheltered previously, it's really kind of him actually facing reality, and facing a reality that not a lot of people would go through. But a lot of people, for that particular class, they wouldn't ever go through that. And he basically just has to navigate his way. It's like a stepping stone into adulthood in the most extreme way.
Yeah, losing all your mates.
Yeah, losing all your mates, your girlfriend, your dad, you know, completely
horrific.
Really horrific, really kind of like trauma stricken.
Yeah, that will be interesting to get all that through these facial expressions and body language.
Yeah, well, a lot of it will be like mood, because he starts off very kind of like, look at me, ha ha ha, and then it's kind of like a, oh dear.
Yeah, all the life sucked out of him.
Yeah, and that's actually a really good way of putting it, because he doesn't get his life taken away from him, but just the kind of reality that he's faced, and the kind of, you know, he becomes really drained. He becomes really drained of just himself, and he kind of sinks into that like depression.
Oof, heavy.
Really heavy. Difficult to play, really difficult to play. But it's fun.
A fun challenge.
Yeah, it's a really fun challenge, and that will kind of be really good for me as an actor, to be able to channel all those emotions, and that will kind of, you know, stick out. I think performatively, that'd be
a good experience for sure.
I don't think that Arthur particularly has any conflict as such with the other characters, but there is definitely that tension at first when like Seward and Quincy and Arthur all meets, because, you know, he's the one that's bagged Lucy, he's the one that's secured the woman's hand in marriage. So there's probably a little bit of resentment from Seward, maybe Quincy, towards him, but I don't think it's very kind of like heightened in any way. And I think because of the loss of Lucy, they all kind of share that loss. They all have each other's backs, really, and they are really like a fellowship. They're like a brotherhood. You know, they've gone through all this loss together. They've realised how deeply it's affected Arthur in that sense, and then they're there for him, which is really good. He's got a very close relationship with a lot of the characters at first, anyway, like Mrs. Westenra, Lucy, obviously. Growing up with Lucy, and, you know, he would have obviously been associated with Harker and Milner, and I think he feels very protective of them as well, especially like Milner, because he doesn't want her to go through the same kind of hardship that Lucy faced, which was losing her life. So he's definitely got that kind of natural instinct to be, you know, protective and to fight his battles with everyone else. And I think he really wants, because he's got that support from everyone, I think he wants to reciprocate it and say that, yeah, I'm in on this as well. Like, you know, I'm here for you.
Yeah, part of the team.
Yeah, he's a real team player, which is really nice. And all around, he's just a good guy. He's a good guy. He's funny. Who's full of emotion. But I think it really just sees his journey from going from boy to man, which is really good. The characters, for example, the bride, the relationships that she has with the other brides, I think she's a bit kind of not competitive, because I think she knows that she's like, you know, I'm Dracula's, you know, he's mine. And they obviously want to share Harker in terms of feasting and that kind of like sexual kind of like prowess. But I think she probably gets annoyed, especially towards the younger one, and she's like, oh my gosh, yeah, he's like, he's so juicy, la la la, whatever she says, and then the bride is there like, well, of course he is, you know, here he is, you know. It's almost like a dominance kind of thing. It's like a move out of the way kind of thing, which is it's really fun to have that kind of power. She's a very powerful character, but she's not like necessarily competing for like to be number one, because she, I think deep down knows that she is number one, because there is the authoritative bride, like the mother of all the brides, who like the OG, as you'd say. But I don't think she's fussed or fazed by her, really. I think she's just there like, well, I'm going to do my thing, and whatever happens to you happens, and I'm just going to keep on doing what I'm doing. Which is, it's a really kind of laid back attitude to have. It's laid back, but it's still very dominant.
Yeah, no, you can, confidence basically.
Yeah, she's full of that.
That's brilliant. No, that's going to be good to see on stage, to be honest.
It's going to be a lot of fun. Of fun, and I can't wait for it to all kind of piece together, because I've not been here for the last like couple of weeks, because I've been on another show, but you can really just kind of see the magic unfolding. It's a really nice experience.
Every time I come back and like pop in and see what's going on, it's like
it's always a really good like impression. Yeah, it's really nice. And yeah, just watching the scenes that I'm not in, or like if I'm like understudying, or if I'm like having to participate, it's a lot of fun to see, especially kind of the conflicts between Renfield and Seward, and Clark as well, because Clark's kind of like the enabler for a lot of Renfield's like grief and just bad behaviour, yet they still loathe each other, and you know, Clark thinks that he's doing things out of just like hatred and like spite for Renfield, but it's actually making Renfield more and more kind of like, ha 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 ha, look at me, I'm evil. Whereas Seward, he's kind of like lost in the mix of it all. He's there like, oh god, he's just trying to balance everything. It's really fun. It's really fun to see that chaos kind of erupt.
It is, yeah. It's like, what's going on there?
Yeah. And Mina as well. I mean, that's a really good character.
Yeah, she goes through a transformation.
Oh, she goes on a journey and a half.
Yeah.
She goes from being like the educated wife of Harker to being this really powerful kind of like being, and then becoming like the new vampire. It's just so much like, wow. It's really like powering to watch that character evolve. It's really fun.
Oh, I can't wait.
Yeah, it's gonna be so good.